I remember when my sponsor, the one that got me into speaking for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, told me that she said, "MAD is my ministry." And I liked that idea, and it's like my ministry is wherever the Holy Ghost shows up to pass on some good news or some means to moving to the next level of our consciousness. And we are ever evolving, we have a desire to be perfect, but the only time we are perfect is when we have deep surrender and become maybe powerless, might be one word for deep surrender. And anyway, part of the mission that I really liked was working with difficult audiences, difficult people. And I'm more of a small audience sort of a guy. And I used to speak for Safe Streets First in Dakota County. And I was kind of taken aback when they asked me to be part of their board. Here I am, an ex-convict, and they wanted my opinion, my perspective on the direction of Safe Streets First and their major objectives. And so I said yes. But the thing I liked about Safe Streets First audiences is just that a person couldn't be in Safe Streets First unless they had multiple DWIs. Just the bare minimum was 3, and typically the audience members had a dozen or so DWs or DUIs, some with incident, some without. Most just had straight up DWIs. Occasionally they might have hit a curb or something, but no fatalities generally, and no injuries to other people generally. And I loved talking to audiences that had a score of DWIs. They're audiences that basically people were giving up on. And they had probably long since gave up on themselves, and that's partly why they were behaving in the way they were, whether consciously or unconsciously. And I feel like, a little light bulb moment came for me and exactly when that was, I couldn't tell you. But there was a cycle of addiction, a cycle of the addiction to judgment, not the addiction to alcohol, that was keeping these people stuck. And I recognized it because I think I had that issue, and it still shows up in my life. So I'm not unfamiliar with it, but I have some tools to deal with it when it comes up. But it's a really odd form of self-sabotage, an addictive one. Not odd in the sense of its frequency, but odd in the sense of its undiscoverability in the people that have it the most. And the addiction to judgment is kind of like this. A person thinks that the good part of them, the part of them that is still good and decent and honest, is the part that says, "Oh, I hate what I just did. I hate that I lost my job. I hate that I got another DWI. I hate that I offended somebody and disappointed my husband or wife, my family, disappointed myself," whatever it is, and people erroneously believe that the part of themselves that hates the other part of themselves, the part that hates, that's the part with integrity. And it's not integrity, but they think it is. So it's a comparative philosophy that self-perpetuates. If there's a machine that is perpetual motion, it seems to be this one. It feeds on this perpetual judgment. And I think our world is addicted to judgment. So it's not just for alcoholics and addicts and codependents. Certainly, I think in the United States of America, we are addicted to judgment, and we're unwilling to study out what other people believe, and we react to their beliefs and we blame them for our reaction, and instead of just loving their shortcomings and loving our own shortcomings. So here it is, a person is judging themselves. They say, oh, I hate what I just did. I hate that I'm here, that I had a DWI, and now I have to deal with all these court consequences. My insurance has gone up and lost my job and all that stuff. I hate it. I'm embarrassed that I'm here. I'm ashamed of myself for what I did. And what they don't know, it's keeping them there. Because that's what they did before, and the time before that, and the time before that, and the time before that. And they are afraid that if they give up on the addiction to judgment, if they give up on the part of themselves that says, I am ashamed of myself, I hate that, I did that, and they're fearful that they'll lose their integrity. If they love the part of themselves that did it, then they feel like they're caving to the dark side, when in reality, it's the other way around. So if we love the part of ourselves that gets us in trouble, it seems counterintuitive, but if we love that part, we get a chance. That's the beginning point. Love is always a beginning point. Here's another example. Thought of this in comparison to my own life and used it in some speeches. It's the analogy of the basement window, story of the basement window. If you take a plant and you set it in a basement, and you have one window in the basement, and it's perpendicular to, gotta bring my hand in here, I don't know how this works. It's perpendicular to the plant. So here's the plant, here's the light, and it's coming from this direction. Now, as the newly born plant comes out, it does what its DNA structures it to do. Is it what? Opens up and grows toward the light. And the light keeps streaming in at this angle, and it's growing toward this light. Now, normally, light does this sort of a thing through the day, right? It arcs through. So the plant, to get maximum light, grows straight up because the arc, the covenant that exists between the plant and the sun, the arc of the covenant, I'm going to call it, makes it grow straight up. But some plants, being in the basement with the light coming from there, do this, right? So, and then as it matures, it grows and it's arced and it's twisted and it looks really bizarre to people. And then you take that plant out of the basement after it reaches maturity and you set it out with the rest of the plants, and everyone goes, oh my God, what's wrong with that plant? And the plant is only doing what it is designed to be doing. It's in its DNA to grow toward the light. So let's say that a person grows up with the light of love in their life, but it's only being given to them in a twisted or unnatural way, and they grow toward that light because that's what our spiritual DNA, for that metaphor, if it works, grows us to do. And then we get out among other people and we're behaving in the way that the last 15 or 20 years has structurally designed us to do. Now we can come back from that and we can grow naturally and become the plants that we're born to be. We can get our innocence back. But will people give us time to do it? So here a person is misbehaving, they're acting out, and they're doing what they're designed to do. but it's aberrant and it doesn't work, and it looks really awful. Sometimes those things manifest in really awful ways. So what do they do with that plant? They grab it, they put it in handcuffs sometimes, and they put it back in the basement. And then they blame the plant that when they release it from the prison, the new basement, they blame the plant for being unhealthy, when in reality, there's such limited light and love in prison, and the access to it is so remote that they don't heal. There's not much chance of healing in the basement, in the prison. And I remember speaking as a keynote to the Minnesota Corrections Association, and I was saying, we got to bring love in there. They have to know they're loved. And boy, I tell you, there were people shaking their head to the negative like this. This one woman was a supervisor with long blonde hair, and she was shaking her head no so strong because she was trying to influence everyone around her, that her hair was sticking out to the side because she had such force with her no, no, no. And this is where I think that prison reform doesn't belong to the prisoners, it belongs to the ones that keep them there. And that's the audience that I was speaking to then. And if you think the multiple DWI offenders were difficult to talk to, try to talk to people in the law enforcement communities. They're the ones that need the healing the most, and they've been traumatized, and they're in a traumatic environment, and they're not often acting any better than the people that they're traumatizing. So let the games begin. Let the trauma begin. That's how their day starts, and they get to go home at the end of it and then try to unwind and heal from the day. But I think it's a losing proposition because there's not any love there. So they're toxic for 8 hours a day, and then they go home and try to be loving for another 8 hours and then sleep it off and start all over again. But that keynote speech was maybe 20 years ago, maybe more, 25. And now they're starting to say the word love. And it takes a long time for a good idea to percolate, but they too are the plants that have been stuck in the basement. So we need to show them unconditional love, unconditional light. And in our morning, come up as a sun, and as the night, go down on their horizon, and then of course become the moon and feed them light all night long if we can. And then there's a dark period of the moon, and then there's a full moon, but it's a 24/7 job to be loving. And what was it? A Sufi warrior, talked about the sun and the moon and the relationship, and how the sun never says to the moon, "You owe me," you know, and that's how we should be with our love and our relationships. So, yeah, we're the wounded warriors, as the Marari book talks about in its opening introduction, and I'll read that and then I'll close this up. If you get a chance to read the poem, the more loving one, I suggest you do it. The poem changed the way I view life. And it was written by W.H. Auden in the year of my birth, and it came into my life, and it was quite a discovery. When I read it the first time, I thought it was talking about man's inhumanity to man. And I didn't see it for the beautiful truth that it was until I sobered up. And then I started seeing things differently. But he wrote, looking up at the stars, I know quite well that for all they care, I can go to hell. But on earth, indifference is the least we have to dread from man or beast. How should we like it were stars to burn with a passion for us we couldn't return? If equal affection cannot be, let the more loving one be me. Admirers, I think I am of stars that do not give a damn. I cannot now, I see them say, I missed one terribly all day. And were all the stars to disappear or die, I should learn to look at an empty sky and feel its total dark sublime, though this might take me a little time. Invocation. The divine does not often choose their messengers from among the, quote, fine, unquote. Jesus and now Mary take in the walking wounded, the hard cases, the troubled, for the feeling of the heart. As we heal our hearts, we are healing the world. Blessed Mary, come to me and to us. She came, quote, back, unquote, to us. She is one of us. She lived, she birthed, she hurt, she healed. She went all the way down before she rose. Then she came back to us to be for us in our counterpart, Mother Earth. Mother Earth is capped, by the way. All right. Peace out. Catch you next week.